This is the Sacred Knowing of Is video series with Tisziji Muñoz, interview number 10. I had some questions covering chapters 85 through 89. Chapter 85, which is titled Purification is the Process of Spiritual Life. Can you give an example of how it might be difficult for one who is experiencing intense purification to perform certain functions or behaviors?
It depends on the purifications. For instance, fasting is a purification. It's an ancient purification. And it is understood that certain kinds of fasting, if you use the example of Jesus, for instance, which is a classic example, who spent 40 days fasting, and that would be without food and water to the best of our understanding. There wasn't going to be very much that he could physically do, because if he's a Superman, superhuman, then he can do things that other people couldn't do. But ordinarily, we are causing the body to enter a state of non-material functioning, say, as a result of fasting. In this case, there's purification, but there is also the inevitability of causing the body to no longer be as physically resonant and powerful. So it loses power. So you lose physical power, but you gain spiritual power. Now, if we're talking about performing certain functions, if you're fasting beyond a point, 1 or 2 or 3 days, there's no problem with that. So you can get spaced out, but you can still function. You can have drinks. You can do things that enable you to sustain a certain kind of fast without losing too much physical power. So along with physical power, you lose emotional power too. Sometimes the emotions are accentuated because you're losing physical power, and you're feeling, after a certain amount of fasting, you start feeling that your body is feeding off of itself. All right, so there are different stages of purification, different types of purification that can seem to make a person, in fact, make you seem disabled or unable to fulfill your duties at 100%. And so it depends on the type of fasting. Now, the highest and best form of fasting is not necessarily physical fasting, although it is recommended under certain conditions to fast, just as animals fast spontaneously when they're sick. Humans are not that advanced. But, so their healing process is much slower and more complicated. We should be, as humans, fasting more periodically. I think in certain traditions, once a week is good fasting. The idea is not just to stop eating food, you have to stop consuming negative energy. That's what you need to fast from. How much negative energy you take on, absorb, put into your body, condition your body, or feed your body with, to pollute your body, to pollute your inner, let's say, consciousness. So we have to have emotional fasting as part of the purification. We have to have memory fasting as part of the purification. We have to have mental fasting as part of the purification. We have to have, let's say, whole body fasting as part of the purification. So in terms of your functioning, you have to adapt your need for purification according to what you have to do. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that unless you get used to fasting, which some people do. They get used to various purifications, physical purifications, that enable them to really operate as if they're even at a higher level than normal. So you need to figure out for yourself, by virtue of experimentation with your chemistry relative to juices and teas and herbs, you know, what is best for you and how to manage that into your work situation so that you find you are able to continue purification. You're able to feel the lightness of it, but not to the extent where you start to fade out. But where if you're doing breathing exercises and yoga along with that, you have much more power. And you can go for a long period of time if you're doing yoga without eating than you ever imagined, because your body can feed off of the yoga and the energies it releases, which are otherwise, I mean, you don't even know you have these energies.
Is it wise or necessary for someone who is experiencing intense purification to distance themselves or cut themselves off as much as possible from the outside world?
Not, well, I mean, it really depends on the person, but the idea of fasting when you're in the workforce is to enable you to be part of the workforce, not to disable you from the workforce. You want to be a better whatever it is you have to do, instead of like, you know, oh, I'm going to be doing my purification, that's going to knock me out of my sense of reality with the world. I don't know that that is the purpose of purification when you have a life to live. Now, if you become, let's say, awakened or inspired by spirit, where you feel, now you got to get away from the world, and that can happen, then you just drop the world, if that's what you need to do. But you need to be sure that that's what you need to do. You can't just do it on a whim. You have to do it when you feel, and you have people who are around you who agree with you that it's time for you to let go of the world, because you are being called inwardly to do something of a spiritual or purificational nature that you really need to extend your purpose here on earth. And these are things that have to be looked at very carefully by the right individuals. You have to have a team. See? So just to start fasting out of nowhere makes no sense. It has to be done scientifically and integratively with what it is that you're dealing with. It's not about fasting just to get away from your family or enter a state of, let's say, astral sort of suspension or disorientation or confusion. No, it's really a matter. Spiritual path is about integrating your forces, not about spacing out and falling out of step with your life pattern or your mission.
Is purification reparation?
Purification is definitely reparation. When you are doing purification, you're paying off debts. See? You're giving up karma. See? You're starting to see yourself, and you're also, if you're in the process of, let's say, creative purificational practice, then you see that what you want to do is refine yourself. That means you're letting go of conditioning you don't need, letting go of karma you don't need. You can be going through bodily purification and letting go of past karma that is accumulated in your body. You can be using your purificational situation to let go of a lot of negative energy in your body, like emotions and feelings and basically bad karma, memories, a lot of memories that you have that are painful. You have to release that because they're built into the body from the ancestral stream, and you can be haunted by that, but you want to be able to release that. You got to put it down. You got to put down the negative energy, see? Or transform it. Basically transform it, but put down negative influences as much as you can. See? Just be beyond them, basically. And so there's a lot of work to be done, but people need to look into these options for themselves on a scientific basis. So we're talking about guides, they have to have a scientific basis. Spiritual guides have to have a scientific basis as well. They have to know what it is. I mean, from their viewpoint, say it's psychically scientific. You know, they have to know it works. So they have to be in tune. And when you're in the company of peeps who are in tune, you're not going to go wrong. If you're doing it on your own, then you're going to have to learn by trial and error.
Are material attachments key to holding one back from material progression and spiritual progression?
Yes, they are. Every night when we go to bed, we let go of the body, we let go of the world. Not so much consciously, because we just go to sleep. So letting go of everything is part of our nature. Detachment is part of our original nature. Because we live as beings in two different worlds, the waking state and the sleeping state, or the unconscious state and the conscious state. So we have to integrate ourselves with the fact of this. See? So we're holding on to too much when our nature is to let go. Our nature as material beings is to hold on. We hold on to pain and suffering. We hold on to peeps. We hold on to things and beings. But that should be done up to a point. Because we're here to let it all go every night, and then ultimately when we pass over. So we need to know how it is we can be in the world and not be of it, or be able to have a materialistic disposition and a world, but also to be detached. So we need to bring both in, otherwise we are holding ourselves back from progression, materially and progression spiritually. because both of them require a certain degree of detachment. In other words, materially you can't hold on to things you know you've already worn out to it, but some people hoard things. They don't create space, they don't renew themselves, they don't renew what they have. Maybe they don't have money, so they need education. So education really helps, so you know what you need to transform, get rid of, or let's say step up.
Is there spiritual progress without purification?
There can be in some cases. Now that's a good question, because we have people who are already on the path and they seem to be more materialistic than the people who are spiritual practitioners. See, so then we're talking about past life possibilities there, or other dimensions of influence going on. See, a person who could be materially situated and look like and be really normal, see, in terms of their appearance and in their relations with other peeps, but we don't know for sure on the other levels how far ahead they may be unless there's some way of perceiving that. So who you see is not what it is. See? You don't know. See? And there are psychics and intuitives that have to pick up on it. Say, well, this person looks like an ordinary person, but when I look into them, they're not ordinary at all. So the ordinary may have extraordinary, let's say, awareness, extraordinary powers and capabilities. And then the extraordinary person may have very ordinary capabilities and powers. See? So we need to look beneath. See? We need to look right into what it is, because then you can tell by, let's say, the timing of a person, if they're spiritually in tune or not. So we're talking now about progression, but attunement. Some people are right on the mark, but they don't even know it. Some people are right on time, but they have no clue about it. They're right on the right way. See? Some people are in resonance, but they don't see it as such. See? So that's why it's important to have a certain neutral view of things and beings and say, well, we have to see beyond what we see. We have to hear beyond what we hear. We have to know beyond what we know. So sometimes you need to leave it up to the person to reveal their true nature to you, or who they really are, where they're really at. See? Because just looking at appearances, sometimes you can tell, but often you're not being true to what it is, because what it is invisible.
Is it true that for certain spirits it comes down to what they need to purify to move on?
The question is, can the spirits know what they need? Right. They need to know what they need. Some need emotional purification. Yeah. Most people, if we're talking about incarnate spirits, we're saying that there are those amongst us that are operating in a way that enables them to be distracted by or preoccupied with things in what appears to be the physical present. And so in some cases, if obstruction of evolution and progression is the case, then they need to see what it is that they're doing. So they have to have a certain level of recognition of what it is in their case, whether it's physical or emotional or psychic or mental, psychological, we can use that word here in this case, yeah, that is needing some kind of purification, uplift, or some kind of transcendence, see, letting go, in order for them to progress. Now this is also why certain relations and configurations of relations come into perspective. Sometimes it takes a friend to help you, to nudge you in a certain direction. See? And sometimes it's your responsibility to nudge a friend in a certain direction, because you can see things, because there's a friend of yours, much clearer than sometimes they can. And so we need to help each other, say, you know, in a friendly manner. Say, you know, you're really stuck on that. You're really stuck in that. Do you know how stuck you are on this issue or this whatever? You might need to give them an opportunity to talk about it and release it somehow, and see if they have some objectivity, because we're talking about, well, there may be more subjectivity relative to certain issues that a person needs to be involved in, or with themselves or with their past. And that requires some kind of objective looking at, you know, seeing, viewing, and then seeing if they can see themselves beyond that. So this is important when you have people you can talk to, in order to bring them to focus on, for the moment, what they need to get rid of, what they need to see in order to move on. And you know, people normally who care for one another can satisfy that purpose. And that's what medical practitioners are supposed to help you do as well, whether it's in the psychiatric, psychologic field or in the medical field. They're supposed to help you look at your problems or whatever they perceive to be these obstructions in health or in mental attitude or emotional obstructions, and say, you are more than that. You can do better than that. You need to go somewhere and get some help for that. Okay?
Are certain purifications more of one body than the other body? More emotional than mental, or more mental than emotional?
Yes, there are a lot of people who we would have to classify as the emotional kind of spirit. They're always emotional. So that means that they are the first ones to cry or the first ones to laugh, and they have a distinct emotional quality. See? They respond to everybody's feelings, and they could be considered the sponges, see, amongst us. Emotional sponges, psychic sponges. Doesn't mean that they're psychic in a certain way. Because you can be very stiff and very hard emotionally and be psychically attuned, because then it might be dependent upon how well you can know things that other people can know, or how open you are to knowing things. See? And so there are the emotional types, so they need to work on that. So you see if they can develop a certain objectivity, or let's say a certain intelligence concerning, let's say, the neutral awareness. So that we can see we are emotional in nature, but we don't have to be emotion. We can move into other levels of feeling, and be able to see. And again, detachment is very important. Objectivity and detachment is very important, because you might be over-emotional. You might be your worst enemy. So you need to know what body, because the emotional body is a body. The physical body is its own body of problems and issues. And we have to have flow in the physical body. We have to have flow in the emotional body so that it's balanced. It's not over-emotional and not so prone to be attached to negative memories, negative experience. And the same with the positive. Some people are too positive. And they're imbalanced. And this is true. When we're talking about enlightenment issues and enlightenment realizations, we're talking about being beyond the positive and the negative. Getting beyond the duality of what it might be for some people. So we have to get beyond that so that we're more clear. Say straight up and clear. Say, oh yes, I have those feelings, but I want to see this more clearly. I don't want to be owned by the feelings and these patterns of emotions that are maybe peculiar and characteristic of my family. Say, I want to be beyond those emotions so that I can do more and do better beyond those emotions and what they are causing me to sort of desire.
Once purified of certain karmas, is it necessary for certain spirits to resume their karmic existence?
Some beings we know go into retreat modes of retreat. So they get away from the world. A retreat is something you want to be able to do on a daily basis. Have a little retreat time, a little quiet time for yourself, a little downtime, so to speak. But I mean literally off the time, completely out of time. See, so you have a little bit of no time for no time. See, you have a little bit of nothing time for nothing. See, so you have a little bit of spirit time for spirit, clearness, openness, just receptivity, hearing, see, hearing more deeply, and breathing more deeply, feeling more deeply. See, so it is true that once we are able to experience certain things, and we experience purification in a certain way, we can get away from our stuff and come back to it. So we can maintain a balance. People who are on retreat, they go on retreats like a spiritual vacation, so that they can come back with more power, more energy, more integration, more understanding, more wisdom, more compassion, just more of the inner things, more spiritual things, to balance their lives out. As needed, we should do that.
So going on a retreat could prompt purification?
It is a form of purification. It is a form of purification. When we're talking about breaking the cycle of our perceptions and our habits, then that could be somewhat purifying. It creates a gap that could be useful to look into that and say, well, I didn't know how badly or how powerful this was. Say, how badly I needed it or how powerfully affected I would be under these conditions. Say. And so once you have an opportunity to get into a place where your patterns of habits are not so much negated, they're just not in effect, where you can stop. You enter a different domain of your own consciousness, where you have what we would call an opportunity to be more reflecting of yourself, more, let's say, quiet, more still, more clear again. See? And so To resume karmic existence is part of it, then there's time to break it completely. Okay.
Is everyone designed for purification?
Everyone is designed for purification. Everyone's body is purifying itself as much as it can, every moment. See? We are cleansing ourselves, and we're polluting ourselves at a quicker rate, it seems, and those people are sicker than they are healthier. See, we're polluting the system. But yes, purification is essential. Fasting is essential. And so breathing, going into deep breathing is essential. These are various kinds of very basic purifications. See, silence is purificational. See, prayer is sometimes purificational. See, being concerned about other people in a good way is somewhat purificational. Purifying your selfishness. See, caring more for others, in a manner of speaking, is a part of a progression. And that is up to a point. You have to go beyond just caring for others. Right? Yeah. You have to be open to helping all beings, not just caring for particular others. So, in other words, we have to get into the all beings, I guess you might say, language of the ancients, that it's about all creation, it's about all worlds. Yes, that we are part of that, so we should be capable of wishing that healed. Right?